Good day, ma'am. Good day, everyone. I am Selena Arcenal together with Nina May Pepito, and we are going to report about Cory's speech and the 1987 Plebiscite Result. Cory's speech is a speech of the late former President of the Philippines, Corazon Aquino, on the 1987 Constitution. Justice for every Filipino. So justice, as we all know, promotes fairness and equity across many aspects of the society. So the 1987 Constitution gave the judiciary the power and the responsibility to protect democracy by giving justice to every Filipino. President Aquino calls for a partnership with the Supreme Court in rebuilding the physical infrastructure of the justice system in the country. After having restored democracy, the government should now attend to the needs of improving the practical administration of justice so that people can work in freedom for progress and with a reasonable expectation of a just and lasting peace. So the 1987 Constitution, to make sure that all of us Filipinos are able to live peacefully and with dignity, safe from any abuse of any individuals or institution, including the state, we have this thing called the human rights. So here is what the late former president said in her speech. When this conference ends, you will have said the last word in a long time on the constitutionalism and justice. I want to take this same occasion to say the first word on the practical administration of justice, to the improvement of which this government now commits itself fully. Justice, it has been written, is the first virtue of social institutions. Laws, however well drafted and well-meaning, are nothing unless they do justice to every man in the ordinary course of his life. That is my concern and my duty, for I am charged as President with the faithful execution of the laws so that every Filipino gets its due. So by here she gives assurance to all Filipinos to give us justice, as it is the first virtue of the social organization. So the continuation to her speech, I stand here honored by the presence of outstanding men and women of the law who contributed greatly to the understanding of the law. My own contributions to the field have been modest: 318 laws and the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines. In the year and a half of my extraordinary powers, these laws range from the renovation of the apparatus of the state to the rectification of the old injustices, in general establishing the framework and the climate wherein our people can work in freedom for progress with a reasonable expectation of a just and lasting peace. But the promulgation of the solitary laws alone establishes merely the standards of a right and justice. It is man and institution that must realize them. In that respect, we have also made some progress, but how much progress remains to be studied. We must measure our progress in the daily administration of ordinary justice both by the standard of a reborn nation's high expectation and by the sad conditions of the past from which we freed ourselves. So she pointed out that the Philippines made some progress in the administration of ordinary justice, but how much has been made remains to be determined. So next. A year before the revolution, a handful of brave and honest men prepared a study on the state of the justice system in the Philippines. Not just the Philippines that legitimized an unconstitutional dictatorship, but the system that one expected to give justice at least to the ordinary man in his ordinary concerns, as a trade-off for the liberty he had lost. So the group of Ricardo J. Romulo. So who is Ricardo J. Romulo? Ricardo J. Romulo was one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution and a leading Philippine lawyer. So produced a white paper outlining the faults of that system and proposing measures for its reform. It saw a system that was, in its words, understaffed, underpaid, and under attack on grounds of lack of integrity, efficiency, and competence. A system where appointments weighted on corrupt loyalties and motivations were merit to take a backseat to connections. A judicial system of the mercy of the purse and the sword of the legislative power and executive power, united in one hand for its subsistence, And finally, a judicial system that I took on the moral tone of the society. It served as a society that J had lowered its moral standards to the level of its fears and J its greed. Fear of a dictatorship and greed for its favors. So, once a judge bends the laws to please those in position for power, soon enough he will bend the law to suit himself or whomsoever he may wish to please. The cure was clear, the same cure for sickness of the nation, a sense of high purpose, a feeling of security to foster the habit of independence, and a sense of pride in the nobility of the calling, which is no less than the care of giving of justice of every man. The revolution cleared the path of the reforms to suit. Men and women of honor may exalted in the judiciary, and the corrupt were removed. Laws and practices that conferred privilege to a few rather than parity on all were abolished. So the revolution paved the way for the reforms and desired, when men and women honored by the judiciary while corrupts were removed. But still, corrupt politicians still exist in this government. So the Constitutional Commission I appointed took it from there and laid the foundation for a system of justice that could do justice if it had the will. The Commission came up with a constitution that established an independence of the judiciary by securing the tenure of its judges and the certainty of its budget. It protected the integrity by removing the selection of judges from the grip of politicians and by limiting the discretion of the appointing power. It provided measures to assure the relevance of the judiciary to the demands of Philippines justice by fixing deadlines for the resolution of cases even for the Supreme Court. For justice delayed, it is not justice denied, but justice despised and finally despaired of the germ of destruction of any government for order of society. In the backhanded tribute to the tragic past of the judiciary took refugee in the dubious doctrine to escape its duty to protect the democracy. The Constitution gave the power and therefore the responsibility to call any branch of government to account for abuse of discretion. Nearly everything that is required has been provided to give justice to every man. Given the will on the part of our judges, my own responsibilities are not over. Justice in our country today, for all the infusion of new blood and integrity we have made, wears the sad aspect of its past neglect. Our courts are shanties, our law libraries are few and scanty. Records are lost or improperly kept, and delay and ignorance still distinguishes the Philippine brand of justice. So we have built democracy, a worthy house. It is time we attended to the needs of justice. The work of recovery will still be long and hard. The damage we inherited was that great. There can be no shortcuts, no instant solutions, no manna from heaven, no Marshall Plan, mini or maxi. We shall rise only as high as our faith will take us up to the steps that we must build with our own hands. Yet we can make sure that tired as we shall be at the end of the day, no rankling sense of injustice will disturb the equanimity of our souls, the peace of our homes, and the tranquility of our society. It is for this peace that the Constitution would have us work for a just and human society. So the 1987 Constitution and the speech made by the late former President of the Philippines was intended as a transitional constitution to ensure democracy and the freedom of the Filipino people. So that's all for Cory's speech. Thank you.
The 1987 Plebiscite Result. February 2 of each year is Constitution Day to commemorate the highest law of the land, and more than 3/4 of votes were in favor of the ratification of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. So a constitutional plebiscite was held in the Philippines on the 2nd of February 1987, and the plebiscite is pursuant to Presidential Proclamation Number 3, which was issued on 25 of March 1986 by President Cory, and it abolished the office of the Prime Minister and the regular batasang pambansa. So the Philippines has 6 constitutions, and the 5 constitutions started with the country's independence in 1898. So the 5 constitutions are the 1899 Malolos Constitution, the 1935 Constitution, the 1943 Constitution, the 1973 Constitution, and the 1987 Constitution. So, the 1986 Constitutional Commission drafted the Philippine Constitution we now know. So, April 1986, President Corazon Aquino created the 1986 Constitutional Commission through Proclamation Number 9. And this Constitutional Commission was responsible for drafting a replacement for the 1973 Constitution. And the first session of the commission was held on June 2, 1986, when Cecilia Munoz Palma was elected president of Commission Constitution. So, Cecilia Munoz Palma was the first woman appointed to the Supreme Court in 1973. And several issues were the subject of heated discussions within Constitutional Commission. The proceedings in relation to the drafting of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, just like other important legal documents in the country, were in no doubt not without conflict. The Constitutional Commission was able to finish its work after more or less 111 days, according to Palma. And on October 12, 1986, the draft constitution was passed with 44 delegates voting for it and 2 against it, and was presented to Aquino 5 days after. So, more than 4 of votes were in favor of the ratification of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. So, on February 2, 1987, a national plebiscite was held after a nationwide information campaign on the draft constitution. The question voters had to answer was, do you vote for the ratification of the proposed constitution of the Republic of the Philippines with the ordinance appended thereto? So that was the question that the voters had to answer. And the results of the 1987 plebiscite canvassed by the Commission on Election based on returns from 85,288 presents, or a total of 21,785,216 votes across the Philippines, are as follows. So, with the affirmative votes of 16,622,111, or 76.30%, and the negative votes of 4,953,375, or 22.74%, and the abstentions of 209,730, or 0.96%. So, on February 11, 1987, through the Proclamation Number 58, Aquino announced the results of the plebiscite and proclaimed the 1987 Philippine Constitution ratified, which also took effect the same day. So, that is all about the 1987 plebiscite result.